everybody, and welcome to my week 3 championship recap. We had a very exciting week 2 with a couple of unexpected upsets that, of course, we're going to dive into today. Very exciting also that I have some awesome guests very early on in the season. I would be very fortunate to have just one of them on today, but in fact, we've got two, Eguy and Voltage. So why don't you say hi, Eguy?
What's up?
How was your week? And I guess introduce yourself for those who may not know you.
My week has been pretty fine, pretty chill. Um, I'm Eguy, and I like to marble, and uh, yeah, I don't know what else to say.
Very impressive resume there. And then we've also got Voltage, the 2024 Summer Tournament champion. Hello, Voltage. How are you doing?
What's up, guys? Yeah, it's been a pretty good week as well. To be fair, I'm very happy with what happened this week as well, and especially those matches that I have covered as well, like Sejuan versus John or Mazik against Jax.
Yeah, those have been
Mm-hmm.
really awesome content to see. So I hope we get more of those every week. It's really insightful analysis and should help some of the mid-table and lower ranked competitors kind of learn more about multiplayer and hopefully continue to improve. All right, well,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to get into our results review for the week, going through games and their respective win bracket. I don't think there's going to be terribly much to talk about in this first slide. We have Subtract taking an FF win over Enetro. To be fair, I think this probably would have been the expected result even if the match was played out. And then we have Quill, Blue Sock, and Red Zone taking their respective wins against considerably lower ranked opponents. And finally, we have Surge versus Kago, which was the voted match of the week. So we'll get into this one a little bit later. On the right here is the final deciding moment between this series. You can see one last red gem was the 1 point win margin for Kago here, completing the very large upset over Surge. So very exciting stuff. Going to the next page, I think is where we have some more interesting games. We have Hughes Matt taking 3-0 over Porter, although that one was a bit closer than the last page in one of the matches. We have Sauce taking a 3-0 over Herzelis, Kali taking down Element, and Plaid Oxide defeating Endzone. Very good game, though, is Plasma versus Farmer's Wife. Did either of you get a chance to see this series?
I watched a little bit of the King of the Marble game. I wasn't uh, unfortunately able to watch the whole thing, but I heard that it was very exciting.
Yeah, I'll say one thing I didn't really expect out of Turk's wife and Turk's brother is their map pool. Turk is, very well known for some of his signature maps like Q-Bile or Epicenter. I thought we would maybe get a mix of those and also some pretty beginner friendly maps, but when Herzelis picked Citadel and nearly won against Osas, and then Farmer's Wife picked Core and was able to take down Plasma, that was really exciting and really surprising to me. It makes me really look forward to what we're going to see out of them for the remainder of the tournament, since Turk does not like those maps whatsoever. Uh, should be
Right.
very cool to see, what they pull out next, especially as they get even closer games in the weeks to come. All right. Not really too much else to say about these games. Yeah, this is kind of the 0-1 bracket where not a lot happened. Finally, we have Yoshi taking down Ziggleflig, although Ziggleflig was very close to actually winning a King of the Ring match. I think it came down to basically one spawn worth of points at the end. So we'll see how he does next week. Getting on to the very exciting games. This is the 1-0 bracket. First up, we have Zedron versus John, which is probably considered the biggest upset of the week, even above Kago Surge. So, yeah, I know you did an analysis breakdown on this one, Voltage. What do you have to say about this matchup?
I think it's a well-deserved 3-0 win. I have to say, Jean played it correctly. Decided to, instead of just perfecting movement, he decided to punch Zedron with some Mega Marbles and Blast as well. And it worked, because Zedron simply couldn't get any sort of momentum that would help him win any game.
Mm-hmm. What do you say your expectations were for the scoreline coming into this match, and why was it a different outcome than I guess what a lot of people expected?
Well, I actually... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I actually was one of the people who had a little bit more faith in John than some of the other people. I saw a lot of 3-0 and 3-1 predictions, and I still predicted that Zedron was going to win, like everyone else except for Eguy. But
Does Eguy really count in the bets?
yeah, okay, no. Well, I called a 3-2, because I remember last year during the third place finale that John did win 2 games, and he was very close to winning a couple more, but got a little bit, just barely beaten, and also had a little bit of bad luck. But I figured this was going to be a lot closer than most people thought. Turns out that it wasn't close, but it was in the opposite direction, which I could not have predicted that.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Voltage?
No, I think I predicted it to go like 5 games at least, but I think I gave Cedron a little bit of an edge as well, just because of his experience and his fast wins against John. But when you saw those games, like for example, Rams Revamped, the only reason why Zedron actually really lost that one is because of making some really terrible mistakes, like with the blockers, where he just completely missed the blues or just over targeted them, because it's not really a good idea, since you're going to get kicked away from the spawn, and then the rest of the spawn can just be collected by the other player. And that's basically how Jean capitalized on those points.
Yeah, crucially on Ramps Revamp, the blue blocker spawns are outweighted by the remainder of the spawn on the ramp. So if you do get knocked away and the other player cleans up the rest of the spawn, they're usually in a better position for the subsequent spawn as well. So that was something that John, I noticed, made really good use of. Would you say Zedron kind of just made some uncharacteristic mistakes, or was a little bit like, I don't know, like sloppy and out of practice, or do you think it was entirely up to John doing a very good job?
I think it's a bit of both for sure, because as I previously mentioned, Jean set himself up very well with hunting around, especially because that is basically his best map that he can use against the stronger players. Since not really that many people play the map, and he can just tactically outmaster them. But I would also say that Cedron did definitely mess up a couple of times by just even picking incorrect decisions. Like even Marble City, I've seen a couple of moments where just like, this is not Cedron at all.
The biggest surprise
Yeah.
of the series for me was definitely Marble City, where John said he basically played one of the best games of his career against Zedron. So I think having that momentum was really important because it gave him hope in the 3-0. And given it was late at night for John, he himself said if he didn't close out that Ramps Revamp game that Zedron was catching up in, it probably would have been a reverse sweep the other way.
Yeah. Zedron got burned by the helicopter a couple times on Ramps Revamped, which shows that he probably hasn't put in a ton of time on that map. I would have to assume lately.
Yeah. Nonetheless, very exciting series, and it sets John up very nicely for a very strong run in Swiss, given that he'll have a easier matchup this week as the bottom seed from the 2-0 bracket. He gets a 1-1 opponent, so should be able to convert into 3-0, and someone is unfortunately going to get the Zedron matchup in the 1-1 bracket, so we will have to pray for whoever that is. Moving on to the rest of the games on this sheet, we have Frostfire taking care of business against Power John 3-0, navigating the Singapore server ping for a few games. Eguy, I don't know why I put 3-1 here on your I think it was a 3-0. Yeah. Tell us about your game, I guess. How was your match this week?
Well, yeah, it was good. I was struggling a little bit during the first game, the Cubile game. I think it was just not being fully warmed up, and that manifested itself in I wasn't active enough with power ups. But I got sort of a little bit bailed out by the spawns towards the end, and also I think in general, I noticed that I managed to stay in the game because I was not always first to spawns, but I was very I was generally very optimized. Like when Lasharkus and I were at the same spawn at the same time, I was usually able to get more by just cutting corners on the gems and controlling the spin quite a bit. Um and then I managed to get the advantage with but the results of that game scared me into picking Sprawl, which is a map that I consider myself to be quite good on, but also a ton of other top players are really good at it. So I figured, I'm not going to need it again more than once. Um, and then I just kind of really got on a roll, and that persisted through Sprawl and through the Battlecube Revisited match.
Yeah, I would say Sprawl is also a comfort pick for you, where you can always just kind of get back in the zone when you were a little bit thrown off guard. And you said you were planning on picking PCC, I think, otherwise, if you had a dominant game one.
Yeah, I was thinking about PCC, just because I'd like to warm myself up on it. But during when I was playing a little bit beforehand, I just kind of wasn't feeling it, and I was feeling it on Sprawl, so I had to go with that, considering that the first game was somewhat close.
Would you say that's a really common method of picking maps for each of you? Like you get into the series, then you see what really feels right in the moment, or do you often come into a series with a game plan of what maps you're gonna pick when?
I definitely have a game plan, but I am not afraid to deviate from the game plan if the moment calls for it.
How about you, Voltage?
I think basically the same. I do plan my games in advance, especially against stronger opponents. Just analyze their weaknesses, the maps that they don't play a lot, and then I can just base a plan off of it.
Do you have an approach for Swiss where you kind of don't play against or play against someone that you haven't really played in practice before? Like if you were to play against me, what would your plan be for picking maps when we haven't ever matched up against each other in multiplayer?
I would pick random troll maps just for the sake of it,
Ah,
just to mess you around with. Just the mind games is what I'm very good at.
yeah. I mean, I guess that's kind of a little bit of what you're known for, so makes sense. Moving on, we have Connie versus Endy, which I had the pleasure of casting. This was an absolute banger of a match. A little bit disappointed it didn't go to game five. But this was a really, really close and exciting game nonetheless. All four games had the potential to go either way. What really made it so close was I feel like Endy has shored up a lot of his weaknesses around, multiplayer fundamentals like Mega Marble aggression and Blast. Uh, really prioritizing picking up those around the map, and I think a lot of them caught Connie off of guard. Did either of you have any takeaways from this series? No? Okay. The
Hmm.
clip on the right we have here from game four. This was the match point where Connie came into this play with about a 5 point lead, 10 seconds on the clock. Pulls off a really nice double super speed. You can see right here she lines up with the other super speed while having one, and pulls this off flawlessly in order to take that last blue. And as soon as it gets into her hands, the game is essentially locked down. So good effort from Endy on one of Connie's signature maps to keep it close, but in the end, she was just a little bit ahead just across all aspects of the game. And then last one on the page, we have Voltage. Obviously, you took a 3-0 against Robert. Anything that surprised you, or did you have a pretty easy time?
No, I mean, it's not exactly said I had an easy time because he is kind of an annoying opponent today, but to be completely honest, I'm not exactly too happy with how I played in, for example, Prophetic. I just kept messing up the marble spin and it kept kicking me down. But I'm very happy about Funny the Sun, for example, because I just dominated possession of those gems and just couldn't get any moment or be comfortable at all with the gems. I just kept on blasting him as well away using the second blast method, with which you just sent him off and grabbed the whole spawn. And all angles, I have to say. He's very good at that map. That's why he picked against me, because So when we played it many times before, it's always been like extremely close. But this time I just controlled the game without much problem.
Yeah. I also noticed the uncharacteristic mistakes you could say on prophetic, giving me some hope I can maybe beat you one day if you play like that. But yeah, the other maps are very clean, and all angles is definitely a good pick against like a traditionally stronger opponent because it's only 3 minutes long, so it's kind of high variance. And if you know what you're doing on that map, you can definitely kind of cheese a win almost. But he had some very good plays with the mega marbles and just overall positioning of the spawns. So nice clean match. Then getting down to the other 1-0 bracket games. In terms of the sweeps, we had MBO taking down Wilches and myself beating Eurobeater. Neither of them really had too much to talk about, I would say. Kind of just clean matches across the board. One match I really want to talk about is the Ignis Barbarica matchup, which had a little bit of spice, I guess, coming into the game with Barbarica asking why everyone was glazing Ignis. And Ignis obviously not playing the game all that much recently. The bets were very much in favor of Barbarica. I guess, is that kind of in line with y'all's expectations as well? Did you guys think Barbarica would be able to take Ignis?
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. Because Ignis has some crazy experience from the past. He's just a very composed player. He methodically and slowly just completely dissects his opponents. And that's basically what happened in this case as well. Just Babarika's inexperience just wasn't enough against Ignis.
Yeah, I think maintaining composure, as Bobrik is a very young player, and this is kind of their first tournament where they're expected to kind of make waves against higher level opponents. That's a lot of pressure. I guess especially against someone as good as Ignis. I will say, like, if I was in that position, I would not dare trash talk my opponent going into it. If I'm like very nervous, that seems like a recipe for failure. And then I would say what really sealed the deal for me was, game one off the bat, Barbarica gets first pick and decides to pick Parkour Peaks, which Ignis holds the world record on and is known for being extremely proficient at. So do you guys think that was just like trying to be cocky or legitimately didn't know that Ignis was so good at that map?
I have no clue. I don't know what he was thinking. I mean, um,
Because it was not
it could have,
close.
yeah, it could definitely have just been, he didn't do his homework. And like, to be fair, Ignis, because he hasn't played a lot, there isn't really, um, you know, the book, sort of the playbook on him and what he likes and doesn't like isn't as easy to find as it is for some other people, but it still is out there. Like, you can still look at the hunt leaderboard, and Bobby Rika, maybe being as young as he was, as he is, like, he's 14. Um, Perhaps he just wasn't um, thinking of enough ways to study your opponents.
Yeah, and it's also like in the previous tournaments, like match history, like you can see what everyone picked, and Ignis has picked
Hmm.
Parkour Peaks multiple times. It's
Yeah,
not even a map I associate with Barbarica in any way, so it must have been like
right.
a map that he's really picked up very recently and was just feeling hot on. Because Barbarica,
Yeah.
I think Nadir was a much better pick. He had a much better time trying to outblast and outmaneuver Ignis on the space friction, and it was still a close game, but
Yeah.
he was able to get that one across the line. Even on PCC, Barbarica probably would have been able to win that one, which was Ignis's pick. It just came down to being a little bit, too frantic and I guess haphazard at the end, trying to
Hmm.
get literally any point in the last couple of seconds, no matter how like risky or desperate it really was, and that's eventually what led to Ignis being able to take that one, which confirmed the series in his hands.
Yeah.
Okay. Last one here we have. Oh, actually, there's two more. Sorry. Nakas versus Turk was another series I thought could maybe go to game five. I predicted a 3-1 for Nakas, and that's exactly what happened. Um, any thoughts from either of you? Did y'all see the series or?
Well, I predicted Turk because, well, I'm a little bit behind on the betting, so I was trying to win big on an upset. But also, just I should know better than anyone else not to underestimate him.
Yeah.
Uh,
Why is that?
yeah. Um, but yeah, Nakas just overall just played a bit better and was, I was a bit questioning that Turk picked Horizon because I know that from personal experience that Nakas is very good at it. But
Mhm.
Turk, I that one I can at least respect, not with like Bobby Rika and Parker Peaks, but like I can at least respect the pick and saying, more, if I'm confident on it, then I'll pick it. It doesn't matter. And it backfired, but I respect the idea. And then King of the Marble was a very, very solid pick, I thought. But I thought that there are other maps that Turk could have picked instead of Horizon that Nakas is very, um, you know, that not doesn't really like.
Mhm. Yeah, I feel the exact same way about Horizon. I think like Triple Decker would have been an excellent pick for Turk up against
Yeah.
Nakas because Nakas is very speed and technical focused. Doesn't do too well into a heavy blast mega aggressive playstyle. And that's exactly what Turk is good
Mhm.
at. So opting into a Horizon matchup on a very important, match for each of them in Swiss is a little bit questionable. It didn't really pan
Mhm.
out the way he wanted, but I at least see the vision there. Um,
Mhm.
so yeah, just a good win overall for Nakas. Definitely puts them in a good position here going into the next couple weeks. And I definitely saw King of the Marble coming. That's something that Turk practiced against me to prep for their game. And given there's not really a huge ping difference between the two of them, King of the Marble was a very good time to bring out that pick, I guess.
Mhm.
Last match here, we have Jacob versus Agame. I believe Jacob was actually able to take the win on Eye of the Storm, which is notable. At least I think this was one of the first games of the week, so honestly, it's a little bit fuzzy for me. But Jacob able to take a pretty convincing series overall, and Agame has since gone to the Eye of the Storm mines to grind that one out and get 200. So congrats to him. Um, Last game in the 1-0 bracket, we had Mazik versus Jax. Voltage, you did an analytical breakdown on this game. What were your key takeaways?
Especially the decision making and the IQ of players that play their maps. Jax just simply was really far behind in it. I think that Mazik just has a lot more knowledge of the game and just understands what is correct to do and what is incorrect to do. And especially the one critical element that I have figured out is leaving gems behind, for camping. And Jax just kept on grabbing gems in terrible positions and kept him losing the time to get spawns.
Yeah. One key takeaway I saw was just the map knowledge difference on PCC was enormous, and that's exactly why Mazik pulled out PCC against Jax because Jax doesn't really have deep multiplayer experience just yet. Hasn't had to play PCC in an important matchup, and this is the kind of rude awakening that will probably drive him to learn. Because if you don't know the respawn abuse on that map, you're not really going to be able to win against a decent opponent, and that's exactly what happened for Mazik. Jax also really has a lot to learn in terms of like Blast and Mega Marble. It didn't really get fully exposed in this series, I would say, but that's something that if I was him, I would try and prep for future opponents. Like if he gets matched up against like Turk in the future or another similar matchup, that's something I would worry about because he's very fast, and we're definitely going to see him pick up a lot more wins in this Swiss stage. But in order to get ready for playoffs, that's something he needs to work on. This clip on the right here, we have another game from Surge Kago. They had two matches where one gem decided it, and you can see Kago was just a little bit closer to the super jump at the end of that spawn, able to get that last yellow gem to win by 2 points, the worth of a yellow gem. Uh, yeah,
And he went up first, right? Like first he went for the yellow gem, and then he realized, oh no, the most of the points are down there.
yep.
So like when I was watching that clip, I was like, dang, how's he gonna win this? But sure enough.
Right. Oh man, that segues us nicely into the match of the week, as voted by a vast majority of people. Surge versus Kago. Kago was able to take this one 3-2 in a very, very surprising upset. I wish we ended up having casters for this series, but I don't think anyone expected it to be nearly as good of a game as it was. Pretty sure nearly all the bets were 3-0 for Surge, maybe one game for Kago. Obviously, his roommate Lasharkus had some hopes and dreams placed in his victory, and that actually came true, winning him an absolute jackpot in the betting, which was hilarious to see. And of course, he's got his old pal Eguy betting on his success. So both of them made a killing from this match. I actually practiced with Kago for warm up on this day, and he really had no idea what kind of maps he was going to pick into Surgy. But what we realized is that Kago is actually majoring in spherical physics in college. And apparently that translates extremely well to Marble Blast, and he just has a very good understanding of spin on the ball. So his marble control is actually phenomenal. Where he's lacking is, of course, the same multiplayer fundamentals that we were talking about earlier with Jax, where he doesn't know any strategy, doesn't know when to leave the last red, doesn't know when to utilize Mega Marble or Blast or that kind of stuff. But on maps like Skate Battle Royale and Skate Park Square, he's extremely good because he can visualize exactly where the marble is going to go when getting in those trenches and just rolling up those half pipes. So he actually performed really well against me and Wilches that morning, and we just told him, hey, pick the skate maps and see how you do. And that's exactly what happened. He took Surge to the skating rink twice in a row, and he was able to take Skate Battle Royale very cleanly. He kind of just had a measured lead the whole game. Skate Park Square did not go as well for him, but well played to Surge on that one. And kept up on Terrace Tundra, which was a little bit surprising to me because it's a very difficult map to navigate if you haven't really had a lot of experience on it. Keiko's a very slow and calculating player, very consistent. Reminds me a little bit of MBO in that he doesn't really ever mess up and he doesn't really ever get tilted. So he will be to the spawn no matter what. It just might not be there first, So that was cool. And then Sergi was trying to close out the game on his pick of Treasure Box, but as we saw, that didn't really come out to play. Sergi was able to sometimes get a couple Mega Marbles in, but overall Kago was just a little bit more consistent with getting to every single spawn and was able to clean up some really big jackpot spawns that had a blue. There was one moment where I think he was able to use a super speed to get one of the staircase blues when Sergi had a Mega Marble there out from under him. So that kind of made a huge difference in terms of coming back because Sergi led the game almost the entire time. And then we got to the randomizer draft, which was really where I thought Kago was going to be in trouble because there were maps rolled like PCC and Prophetic, maps that I can guarantee you Kago has never really played, nor would be good at on the first time through. But he managed to get to a map that he's at least played before because it was in the pre-seed, which is Sweep. And this is a map that Sergi was able to win on in the previous week, even though A-Game picked it against him. So, I still thought Sergi was going to be pretty favored here, but Kago was just incredibly composed. I would say Sergi got a little bit sloppy and a little bit nerves got to him a bit too much. And you could really see it in the last few spawns where he used his blast early and missed an easy blue. And that's kind of where Kago was able to come back and just win off of sheer, composure, which was really, really impressive. Do either of you have some takeaways for this series that you noticed?
Yes, definitely. Especially the fact that Surge, because of the pressure, he just wasn't able to play, the simple multiplayer. Instead of just trying the difficult tricks, he's done those and completely failed them. Especially you can see that in Skate Battle Royale, where instead of just going with the regular super jump to the platform, he decided to go through the hole and it failed completely, and just left the spawn for free for Kago to grab. And that's the critical mistake that lost him the game.
How would you describe Surge's multiplayer playstyle traditionally?
He just, I think he just wings it. He just tries whatever comes to his mind. He tries to move around and get to places however he feels like. It's not like he follows any sort of meta. He just tries his best.
Yeah, That kind of tracks. I casted his game his playoff game against Kale last year, and he yeah, there's definitely moments of sort of brilliant improvisation followed by some pretty mistakes that make you face palm.
Yeah, a lot of inconsistency, I would say, characterized this
Mhm.
set for him, and it's unfortunately going to drop him into the O2 bracket, which, as the top O2 seed, he has to play someone from the 1-1 bracket, and so he's in real danger of actually starting this tournament O3 and having to win out in order to make play-ins, which is a really bad place to be. So I'm hoping for this sake he can kind of turn a new leaf this week. We'll have to follow him up and see if he can secure a third match of the week in a row for us. All right, that's going to conclude the review portion. So let's hop over to the ELO rankings, which have been updated with the results of week 2. Just to give a quick overview, Eguy, you are the #1 rated player in Marble Blast as of this moment.
Oh no shit! Wow. Okay.
Yeah, you have been gifted that title as Zedron has fallen 4 places off the back of a stunning upset by John. You can see John has moved up 6 after 3-0ing Zedron
Wow.
and stealing a sizable portion of his elo. And then everyone else that was able to 3-0 their series, which is the 3 of us, and then Frostfire, continue their climb. Connie lost a little bit out because everyone else went up and she dropped a game to Endy in a close series. Mazik moved up, but not that much since Jax played some close games with them. MBO stays put. Ignis goes down from playing really close against Babarika, who was pretty lower rated just based off of a low pre-seed score. Nakas also goes down after dropping a game to Turk. Endy gains a little bit from a decent set against Connie. Turk gains a bit from Nakas, even though that series was lost. And overall, not too much movement. You can see most people are going up and down, like 2 or 3 in the midfield, but nothing huge. And then at the bottom, mostly not a whole lot of change. Farmer's Wife gained a place off of a very close series with Plasma, while Plasma lost out. Kago is a big mover, going up 2, but you can see kind of where he was. There's a huge gap below Blue Sock. So he probably would have gained more than 2 if there was a little bit more concentration of players here. But he gained like 70 elo apparently when I asked. So really good stuff from him. We're gonna have to see how Kago does the rest of the tournament. He's definitely gonna be someone to keep an eye on, especially if he can learn the strategy. Anything stand out to either of you in these standings, or kind of what you expected?
Yeah, I mean, I'd expect Jax to be a little bit higher, but we'll see.
Yeah, Jax is really low just from a low pre-seed, actually, and then had the unfortunate reality of playing Mazik as a result of that.
Right.
So,
right.
Should have a much better time in week 3. We'll have to see.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's get into our predictions. I'm going to start from the bottom again with the O2 bracket. Ziggleflig versus GG Jacob, Enetro versus Herzelis, Pastoriel versus Element Lover, and Endzone versus Deathlora. Is there anything to really talk about here? Or should we continue, I guess? Basically 3-0s, or do you guys see any of these series having some games dropped?
I really don't know because I haven't really spent a whole lot of time with any of these players. I think that I think there's some potential for non-3-0, especially the one with Enetro and Herzelis, and also Pastoriel versus Element Lover. Mm-hmm. Although, I don't know. We'll see.
Okay. Well, I think Ziggleflig should be able to 3-0 GG Jacob, although I would not be that surprised if GG Jacob takes the game, just because I know he's been practicing the hunt level solo for a bit. And then Enetro, I believe, is forfeiting against Herzelis for the 2nd week in a row, and then should be back for week 4. Although that said, I think Herzelis would have actually won this game, given how they played against Osauce. So, did you have something, you guy?
Oh no, I just forgot about the forfeit.
Yeah. So unfortunate, but Herzelis probably going to end up where they would have been anyway. Element, I actually think this will be a very close series. The ping difference, I think, could play a very big role, given Pastoriel's in, I think, Vietnam. or someplace around there. And Element is not good, but not terrible. So I think they're kind of around a similar skill level where this could be a close series. And then Enzo Death Laura, yeah, not gonna touch on this too much. We saw their game against Blue Sock earlier today. And Enzo, while they got slapped around by Plot Oxide, I think they're good enough to be able to take this.
Right.
Moving on to the 3 games, for some reason, Challenge gave us between 1-1 and 0-2. First up, we have Sergi versus Yoshicraft, which should be an interesting one. What do y'all think about this one?
I think 3-1 to Surge is what I think.
Yeah, that's what I said too.
Well, that is also what I said, so glad we're in agreement. I think Yoshicraft has the potential to pull out some really cheese maps, like Eye of the Storm, and give Surge a hard time. But I don't think he's going to get more than one game in that fashion. So hoping that Surge is able to turn it around and get some confidence back going into the rest of the Swiss. Next up, we have Lasharkus Porter, and that should be a 3-0. Porter was just really, really unlucky, to be honest, to draw someone this good. I have no idea how this matchup got formed in Challenge, but whatever. And then Hughesmat versus Farmer's Wife. This one's actually pretty interesting to me. Farmer's Wife is not that bad of a gem hunter, but also is very, very tactical when it comes to the Mega and Blast, which he definitely has gotten from playing with Turk so much. So what do y'all think for this game?
It's gonna go to game 5.
You agree, Eguy?
I put 3-1 in favor of Hughesmat, but I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to game 5.
Yeah. I put 3-1 actually to Farmer's Wife. So 3 different answers here. Having spectated and recorded the Hughesmat versus Porter game, Porter is definitely like a bottom tier player in terms of the whole tournament, and he still led a game on Cascade Falls for more than a minute against Hughesmat. So just based on that alone, I think on some surprise picks that Farmer's Wife might be able to pull out if she has a core and something else similar, I think that should be able to get at least her picks 1. And then from there, we'll see if she can pull one of Hughesmat's. Should be really, really interesting. I'm excited for this series, actually. Now moving on to the 1-1 bracket. I don't think we need to talk about too much this Zedron matchup, other than do we think A-Game can take a game on something like Eye of the Storm?
He won a game in 2023 against Zedron on in the playoffs on Marble Agility course.
Yeah, that's the exact kind of gimmick map that A-Game would be able to thrive on. So do you think he gets that one this year?
I said yes. I mean, there's no penalty for guessing the wrong in the betting. There's no penalty for guessing the wrong score. So I said 3-1.
What about you, Voltage?
I agree. I think Marble Jelly Course will be a game where he takes.
Interesting. We'll have to. I mean, you both predicted the map as well, so we'll see if he picks Marble Agility Course and takes the win. I said 3-0 for Zedron. I think the skill gap is just a little bit too large this year, at least, but we'll see. A-Game's definitely been practicing, so should be interesting. Subtract versus Quill. I feel like I don't have the best gauge of where Subtract is at. I know Quill is pretty solid, but I really didn't know what to think of this match. Did either of you have insight? I guess we'll start with Eguy.
Well, yeah, I don't really know much about Subtract, but I think I'll go with Quill 3-1. Considering Quill was very tough on Jax, and from facing Quill in the playoffs, I did win 4-0, but a couple of the games were quite close. So I think Quill has a win in him for the the 3-1 win.
Okay. Any thoughts, Voltage, or you mostly agree?
I think Quill is actually going to sweep the Subtract. Quill is just too controlled. I don't think Subtract can actually take a game off. Maybe get close, but I think Quill is going to win 3-0.
Okay. I agreed with Eguy. I said Subtract could take a game. And this is mostly just blind faith, because I really have no idea what Subtract is capable of. But if they have a map in there that can surprise Quill, I think that's where the win would come from, more so than a traditional multiplayer map where would be Quill highly favored. For the next games, is there any disagreement with Jax and Eurobeater sweeping?
Nope.
Yeah, kind of figured. This next match is pretty cool, I guess, for those that have been around a lot longer than I have in the multiplayer scene. These are some very older players. What do y'all think? Let's start with Voltage this time.
I think Turk is going to take this one. Just like Kelly was like really one of the best back in the day, but now he just really does not have the ability that he used to have back in the day. I think it's going to be like a 3-1.
Yeah, I actually said 3-0 because I think just especially Kale back in the day he was well, especially around the time when he made the finals in 2016, he was that was a time when someone with a lot of single player skill could easily transfer over to the best in multiplayer. I don't think that's quite the case as much as it was anymore. He dominated the Marble Blast Gold World Record Rampage in like what was number 4. But like I think just his sort of keeping up with multiplayer strategy makes him a bad matchup for Turk. I could easily see him if this were a playoff match, I would maybe call it differently because Kale, considering I think what happened last year in the game with NBA Ultimate is that he was sort of getting slowly warmed up throughout the Swiss because he doesn't really practice outside of his tournament matches, and then that resulted in him playing really well in the playoffs. But it's too early, and I think this is going to be a 3-0 in favor of Turk.
Cool. I want to break down something you said. You said you think back in the day the single player translated better to multiplayer, but he can't get away with that now. Why do you think that is? That it's like changed to be less solo hunt based?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't know. I think people are just people are just more conscious of you know these things. Well, having a bigger map pool is certainly helps. Having more specialty maps where Mega Marbles and Blast are sort of a big thing. I don't know. It's just sort of a general trend. Like people like Jean being making their mark. And yeah, I think the map pool is a big thing because back in the day it was a lot more heavy on the MBU maps, which are sort of more classic. And people just didn't put as much time and energy into practicing and studying multiplayer back then because the tournaments were kind of just getting started, and people were treating it as sort of a fun thing. It definitely induced some rage, but it was less of a serious. I mean, as serious as you can be when talking about a game with rolling balls, but like comparatively speaking.
Okay. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Thanks for explaining. I had a 3-1 for Turk, so I agree with Voltage. I think I agree that Turk is like a lot better than current form Kali, but I don't know. Something about Turk's consistency in these tournament games that we've seen so far doesn't feel like he's at like peak form when he's playing these games compared to maybe a little bit of practice where he's a little bit more loose. So I think Kali might be able to find a map where you can take a game. Moving on, we have Babarica versus Osas. As much as I think Osas has improved, I think this one should just be a 3-0 sweep, something to give Babarica his confidence back. I think Wilches is probably also going to 3-0 Red Zone, and I think Robert is going to 3-0 Blue Sock. Any disagreements on these?
Nope.
Nah.
Yeah, I figured. All right. And then I also have ND30 Kago. This one's maybe a little bit more worth discussing after Kago's huge upset over Surge, but I think ND has just improved way too much lately. And if they played that close of a series against Connie, I don't think Kago's going to have much of a chance in this one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. ND's just really, really fast. And I think I did pick Kago to win one game, but that was more of a attempt to get some point, like some, I don't know. Yeah.
So you play the bets as like trying to win the most money rather than trying to get perfect predictions. Like if you see a good opportunity, you'll take it.
Yeah, well, I'm like very behind, but I mean like with this like for some of the more tightly contested matches, I'm like trying to predict perfectly, but like this one, I think it's going to be an Endy win either way. So I'm just trying to have a little fun with 3-0 versus 3-1.
Yeah. Okay, and then we have the split 2-0 1-1 game. John against Power John, the Battle of the Johns. I think this one should just be a 3-0 sweep because I feel like if you can sweep Zedron, you can sweep Power John 25. So, yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
And now we're moving on to the 2-0 games. These should be pretty exciting. First up, we have Eguy versus Nakas. Are you excited about this one? I know you two have
Oh,
some
I'm
history.
thrilled. This is going to be so much fun. For those who don't know, we faced I think that might have been the first in-person tournament match in history, and I was visiting some family friends in Seattle, and so we happened to be in the we might have actually they might have actually rigged the bracket a little bit so we could face while I was there, and so we played in the same room, and it went down to the randomizer, and the last game was Vibrancy Grounds, and I won by 1 point. Uh, so the reactions, I wish we record. I think we might have recorded it, but it got lost. The reactions were pretty crazy, and then later we met in the playoffs, and it was the semifinals, and I got reverse swept. I lost a 3-0 lead. There's a whole other story behind that game. And sort of part of the reason why I lost my momentum. But we can get into that another time.
Yeah, I imagine you're hoping to take revenge for that all these years later.
Well, yeah.
Voltage, what are your expectations for this game?
I think it's going to be just as good as in 2018. Like that was like the best match I've ever seen back in the day. But I think Eguy will actually take it again. I really do think so. Just because Eguy is like far more balanced in terms of like all technical ability that he has in multiplayer. It's just slightly better in everything.
Yeah, I think
Hmm.
that's pretty fair. Iga I just think is a little bit more flashy than Nakas. I would say like their like raw speed is really really similar. But Iga kind of has those clutch moments. He also has those moments where he's incredibly inconsistent in throws, but I don't think that's gonna be as prominent in a match against Nakas as it is against like a top contender like MBO. So I expect Iga to be able to take this one. I put 3-1. I wouldn't be surprised if Nakas gets 2 games, but yeah, should be a really exciting one to watch. And then I put my game here. I don't really predict or talk about myself, but it's here in case either of you had thoughts on it.
This looks like a typical 5 game match again. I think just because Connie just has like a really weird style that is like unexplainable, but it is just so deceptively good that I think you might have a little bit of trouble to keeping up with her antics.
I'm expecting some trouble for sure. What about you guys?
Yeah, I'm calling it 3-2 in your favor. I think that's because I think you have a little bit more of a balanced map pool. Um, yeah, I think that Connie is just very you know, she is good at some very strange maps, and also just very fast in general.
Yeah, this is a series that if I were to commentate on it, I would think would go to game 5 with everyone winning their own picks because Connie and I have such like different clashing play styles that we can pick maps that the other person's gonna suck on. So
Mhm.
yeah, should be exciting. I hope everyone enjoys it. Next up, we have your game Voltage. How are you feeling going into your match with Jacob? I think y'all have played before.
Yeah, very excited about it. To repeat it again. Hopefully he prepares something that is like a bit more interesting than last year, and just maybe play some mind games again, as usual.
What are your thoughts going into it, Eguy? Should be pretty straightforward for Voltage.
Yeah, I think I'll call it a 3-0. I think definitely some of the games could be a little close, but I don't think it's going to be a huge problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also put 3-0. I think Jacob is a little bit higher seed than what his multiplayer prowess has really shown thus far in the tournament. So I don't think it'll be any trouble for Voltage. That's going to bring us on to our first featured matchup. You guys wanted me to make 2 slides, so we're going to have 2. Frostfire versus Ignis. Is there any sort of history between these two? I know they've both been around for quite a long time.
They haven't faced off any time, but Frostfire is formerly like one of the best players to ever play the game, alongside with Roll Cage. So we had a massive rivalry back in the day because they were two like the best players by far, and no one just could even contest them by a long shot. But I think that experience from Frostfire will potentially get him over the line here and win, and especially when he picks his really funny assortment of maps that he has.
Mm-hmm. Do you expect it to
Yeah.
be close?
Yeah, I do think so. I think Ignis has definitely some fight in him that he can use. As you can see here, like in this graphic, like they have very different maps. Like they'll probably win it like their own maps, but I don't.
Yeah.
I might actually go to like I think I might actually go to randomizer. I do think so, but I think Frostfire will take it.
I could also see it going 3-2, partially because well, I'm not sure if Ignis is actually going to be able to do or if he's actually going to bother to do this research rather. But yeah, Frostfire is not great on Parkour Peaks or Sacred. Terrace Tundra, I don't know. I mean, that's a pretty I think that should be a pretty decent map for him. But um yeah, I think that if Ignis is smart about it, he could push it to randomizer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my expectations are a 3-1 for Frosty. I think he's just still so good. After all this while not even playing the game, he comes back and just dunks on people. So we have yet to see his final form in this tournament, but I think we're going to start to see it in this matchup against Ignis. Ignis is probably going to be able to take 1, I think. But beyond that, maybe a win on Parkour Peaks. Like, I think it's going to be hard for him to find clear-cut wins against Frostfire. Any more to say on this for either of you? Okay.
No, I think that's it.
This is the one I am most excited about since I play these two pretty often. We all get in the server and alternate 1v1s with each other, and it's always a grand old time. NBL Ultimate versus Mazik. Very spicy matchup. These two have a little bit of a rivalry going on, and some nicknames for each other as well. So
I didn't know about this actually.
Yeah, I'm very excited. These are both people I put in my tournament contenders video. So we are getting a deep playoff caliber matchup early on in the tournament, week 3. So I guess let's start with Eguy. What do you think this is gonna turn into?
Yeah, I also have 3-2 in favor of Mazik. I think because last year was so close, and I remember the randomizer game. I think might have had a crash, and that kind of created a bit of. I don't think it really, you can never know. Weird things happen when a game gets interrupted, but I just know that it was very close, and also Mazik has a little bit of an edge in terms of like overall speed, and I think he, considering that he has been at the top of his game for like a much lesser time than MBO has, that might work in his favor. Like I think he might have improved even more in this past off season. He's been sort of really putting in the work. but then again, MBO has been on top of his game for years and years.
And still plays very
So
often.
yeah,
These two have put in a lot of games against each other, so they entirely know what's coming.
Oh yeah, I have no clue who's gonna win. But I'm just
I'm gonna
barely
force
handing
you to
it to Mazik.
decide.
I'm barely gonna hand it to Mazik.
All right, very cool. What about you, Voltage?
Yeah, I think without hesitation, I'm going to pick Mazik. And yes, yes, it is going to be a 3-2, but here's the thing about it as well. With the new tools and optimizations that we have for multiplayer, Mazik just has been able to latch onto them at much quicker, much easier as well than NBO. And I just think he has a little bit more than NBO in terms of the strategical department of multiplayer. And I've played both of these players like hundreds of times, and I just feel that Mazik is slightly better at this point.
You managed to get the two people on this video who have the exact opposite records against MBO.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, Eguy
Yeah.
thinks MBO is a great player, and Voltage does not. So, can you elaborate a little bit about what you meant by like new tricks and optimizations in multiplayer?
No, but like back in the day, like when I played hundreds of games with MBO, like there really not that many people knew how to play like multiplayer properly. Like there wasn't any that much strategy back in the day, because currently you have like tens of players who know how Blast works, how Mega Marble works, and all those tactics that use it against each other. Back in 2018, it was like 5 people at best. Like that's how little people actually knew how to play multiplayer at this high level that is being played right now. And I just think that Mazik has been able to adapt to this style much longer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mazik's someone that has probably put in the most hours in the off season this year to prepare for this, both solo and multiplayer. So I'm expecting a very good performance for him. But in terms of how the match is actually going to play out, I would expect Mazik's picks to kind of deliver him the wins on his choices. Whereas I expect MBO's picks to not necessarily win him games. Like I don't expect him to be like highly favored over Mazik on any of these maps I put here for him. But I think they're going to be close enough that kind of his composure and experience can make the difference. Where he's been at the top of the game for so long, he's an incredibly consistent player. You know, whether I'm having a good day or a bad day, MBO plays the same no matter what. And Mazik, I know, is much more, inconsistent. Sometimes has days where he's unbeatable, and sometimes has days where he can, easily drop several maps. So we're gonna have to see how that actually turns up. But if it's somewhere in the middle or maybe it's a little bit shaky, that's where I would expect NBO to be capable of taking his picks. So that's kind of how I expect it to play out. Do y'all think similarly there?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's interesting, I think this is a matchup between two players with the like probably the widest map pool. Like I think they both have very few weak spots and they're very consistent in how they play on almost every map in the pool. Um, compared to someone like even like Zedron or Frostfire where they're like absolutely unbeatable on some and then more human on others.
More human. Yeah. No, definitely on the PQ maps like that Mazik is known for, like Citadel or maybe like Vibrancy Grounds. That's where I think there could be some sort of an advantage against MBO. But we'll see. I don't know if Mazik is like willing to use those picks like this early in the tournament. Now that you only get two of them, like they could be more effective against some of the other top players. I think he'll kind of feel out MBO with his first pick, and if the series isn't like going super well, then he'll try and bring it back with like a really niche pick for his second option. But maybe that's reading a little bit too far into the details. Anyway, that is gonna be it. This is the last slide for this matchup. So, any closing thoughts? We're nearly at 1 hour. You guys excited for this week?
This is gonna be a great week. It's gonna get even better. going forward.
Anything from your end, Voltage?
It's only going to get more and more heated as we move on, especially at the top when it gets to it gets to 3-0s and then gets to 4-0. We're just going to see the highest quality of the quality matches.
Yep. Especially that middle of the pack, like this week is like kind of messy with 1-1 being such a big group. There's a lot of like strong versus weak players all in that group bunched up together, matched up against each other. But once they split up to like 2-1 and 1-2, I think the games are going to get even more and more better. So looking forward to that. But we've got quite a lot of exciting games this week, and a lot of them are going to be casted as much as we can. So yeah, there's lots to look forward to. I'd like to thank both of you guys for coming on. I wasn't expecting to have two such high quality guests this early in the season, but really awesome stuff. And yeah, thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you for having us.
Of course.
Thank
All right.
you.
See you guys.